Good evening. This is CTV News for Tuesday, July 19th. I'm Patricia Vallone.
And I'm Denise Douglas. So glad you could join us this evening. A Temple Hills man pleads guilty to first-degree assault of a Prince George's police officer in July 2015. As part of a plea deal, 27-year-old Danny Harville admits to an incident in District Heights in which he dragged an officer more than 300 feet with his car before crashing into a tree. The vehicle rolled over Officer Michael O'Connell, causing extensive injuries. In this clip, O'Connell's partner calls 911 for backup.
311. My partner's being drugged right now, back off the Todd Drive.
Understanding that it was a residence where drug transactions were happening. As this vehicle came up to the residence, they approached the vehicle, the officer did, and he smelled marijuana inside the vehicle. That's what made him begin to question our defendant in this case, and it was when the defendant then reached into the back seat, the officer, out of fear for his safety, reached in to grab the defendant, and that's when the defendant put the car in gear and took off, ultimately injuring the officer.
Harville also pled guilty to one count of possession with intent to distribute in a separate incident on Suitland Parkway in April 2015. Prosecutors say Harville will likely get 3 to 4 years in prison and 5 years probation when he's sentenced on August 25th.
The shooting deaths of unarmed black men by police and the ambush slayings of officers have heightened racial tensions. At a press conference this afternoon, Governor Hogan spoke about the issues, including the third acquittal in the Freddie Gray case. Hogan says he's leaving the outcome of the cases up to the judicial system, and he has been meeting with faith leaders and the NAACP to make sure that things get better in Maryland.
Tension in this nation, worse than I've ever seen in my lifetime, and we've got to find some answers. And you know, here in Maryland, I can't solve all the problems in the country, but here in Maryland, we've been working very hard to bridge some of the gaps and to reach out. We've been spending a lot of time in Baltimore City and meeting with faith leaders and talking with people in all the neighborhoods and working with the NAACP, and we've been working with the police on some reforms and passed some legislation.
And the governor says prosecutors did not have enough evidence to convict the officers. Well, as the nation continues to try and heal from the recent shootings of African-American men and police officers, questions continue to surface. What can be done, and can the future of race relations be repaired?
That's right. We have Bowie State University Assistant Professor David Reed here to try and answer some of those questions. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thank you.
Kind of start off with your thoughts on all that's going on.
Well, I think that violence in the black community, particularly police violence, is something that really isn't new. I think that with social media, in terms of Facebook and Instagram and some of these other forms of popular media, we see it more, and so it's more visible. So now we have a front row seat, if you will, to see these things up close. But it's actually been going on for quite some time. So I don't think that it's new. I just think that there's more attention being paid to it now.
There was a recent poll that said 60% of likely voters think race relations are actually worse now. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think that there's an anger. I think that when President Obama first came into office, there was great optimism. You know, there was hope, and I think that there was a vision for creating a better America. But the economy was really bad, and people were unemployed or underemployed, and there were still problems that some of which he solved, and other things, you know, when he had a Congress that really wasn't very cooperative. So arguably maybe a lot wasn't done that could have been done. But I think that there is a genuine anger about the state of affairs, and you know, you start at the top and say that they're responsible. Although I think really it's a state and local problem in many cases. We can't rely on just the president to solve the problem, I don't think.
Speaking of problem solving, we've heard a lot of groups since Minneapolis and since Louisiana, Dallas, all of that, talking about solutions. What do you think can be done?
Well, Dr. King used to always say that religion and education are the two areas where you can change how people feel and how people think in terms of the mind and the heart. I'm not so sure that the education system by itself can do it. I do think that there are certainly at Bowie State and other colleges, we talk about these things all the time. We have forums and we try to discuss ways of solving it. I think it takes community leadership from the churches, the civic organizations, fraternities, sororities. I think there needs to be maybe a different method. And I know that there are a lot of good police officers that do good work every day, but I think there needs to be something in the training, maybe some sensitivity dealing with the African American community in terms of how to approach a situation that's volatile, to de-escalate the situation. I think it's going to take a dialogue and continuing dialogue between church, civic, social organizations, parents, community leaders, and the police themselves. We need to maybe go back to community policing where you know the police officers in the neighborhood and there's a relationship. I know as a classroom teacher, when I have a relationship with my students, then I can correct them, then I can guide them, or I can talk to them. But if there's no relationship, then that's when you see hostility.
If whoever is elected in November, whether it be Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, do you think that that person will be able to unify the country?
No, I don't. And I don't because I don't think that you can do it in 4 years. You can do it in 8 years. Unfortunately, the problem of race has been something that is centuries old in our country since its inception, from slavery and, of course, the Reconstruction period after slavery and Jim Crow segregation. So these are deep-seated things that have been happening for a long time. So I don't think any one president can wave a magic wand and solve the problem. I think we're in for the long haul. I think certainly their leadership is going to be important. Either person who's elected needs to have an agenda, needs to work with Congress, and we also have to hold people accountable when, like these people that are not being prosecuted in the Freddie Gray situation. Things like that need to be, I think, re-examined because when we lose faith in the courts and lose faith in that democracy, then it's going to be a very, very long way to go.
And just quickly, are these things that you're talking about in your classroom, and do you think the students will sort of take this and enact the positive parts in their lives?
Oh, yes. My students, and I'm sure students throughout the country, are very concerned. They're very intelligent, and they're very interested in trying to find solutions to these problems. And they definitely want to see an improvement in race relations, and I think that we'll see some good things from this young generation.
Great. Thank you,
so
Professor.
much.
Appreciate your time. Meantime, if you would like to talk with police, local leaders, and others about race relations in light of the recent high-profile shootings around the country that we just talked about, you can. There will be a town hall meeting tonight at 7 at the Civic Building in Silver Spring. And on Wednesday at the same time, there will be another at the Up-County Regional Service Center in Germantown. The events are being sponsored by Montgomery County. It's an effort to allow people to have an open and honest discussion.
And you are watching CTV News. I'm Patricia Vallone.
And I'm Denise Douglas. Coming